All right, so in this episode, we're going to talk about how to create an effect. So tell us, what is the first step in creating an effect?
So now that we have our effects pool built, we're going to do, to create that effect, we're just going to right click on an empty pool item. We're going to do number 64 right here. So we'll just right click. You can do this several ways. You can select lights first. In this case, we didn't do that, so we'll do that later. But you can see it says edit on there. The other thing you can do is hit edit, which is in your on your buttons over here, and then hit an empty one. It's the same thing as hitting right click, but so I just hit right click. It's a little quicker. Then over here, it shows that we have our effect editor open. It says new, so we're just going to hit add right here. Add. And then it pops up with all of the attributes that we could possibly do. We're going to do dim right here, and then we're going to hit confirm. So it populates one line in our effect editor. So you can see right here in the quantity it says none. That corresponds with the T right here on our effect pool. That means this is a template effect currently, and we're going to change it to a selective effect. To do that, we'll just select some lights. We're going to do all of our static LED fixtures. We're just going to select this one right here. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to click on none to make sure there's a white box around it and hit take selection. Now that populates to 8. That means there's 8 lights now being affected by this effect. And if you look over here, that changed to S. That means this is now a selective effect and only those 8 lights will be affected. So now we'll just go through the line here and look at all the stuff. Before we do that, we want to play it. So just click on it right here. Click on number 64 and it'll play. You'll see it on the 3D there. It's playing. And we're going to just look at a few of these options we have in our window here. There's a couple ways we can look at this window. We can look at it in this kind of column way. We can also look at it in, if you hit edit effect line, it's going to pop up with some graphical user interface stuff. I don't really like to use these too much just because it's the same information and I really like to click and just type numbers. So I'll go back to the edit effect option. We're not really going to look at interleave. This is basically what lights are going to be affected by this effect within our selection. I want them all to be affected, so we're not going to change that. The mode is absolute. You can change it to relative. In this case, we don't want to do that. If we do that, it's going to make all the lights, you have to reapply it, but all the lights should then be on like that, because the dimmer value, it's based on the dimmer value of the light itself. So the light's set at 100. That means that our effect will not do anything. So we're going to change it back to absolute so we can actually do something with it. In the form column, we have, right now it's a sine wave, and I'll right click and it'll pop up with all of our options. We can create custom ones of these. We don't need to right now, but we could if we wanted to. We're on this one right here. Basically, if you look at this is a sine wave. So everything's graphical. So we have our X and Y axes and we have 0 to 100 on both. So right now, this is, if this line right here was 50%, this line was 100%, and this line was 0%. Our effect is going to start at 50%, go to 100%, go back down to 50%, to 0%, and then back up to 50. That's just how the flow is going, so it's just continuous motion of that. Then, if you look, we could change it to cosine, and you'll watch it'll change the way that the movement is. All these are different options. If we do, like, let's say we do a chase, they're going to chase each individual light across that line. In our case, we'll just leave it at sine for now, but you can play around with that whenever you'd like and just see what they do. Okay, the next two columns kind of work in tandem together. So the rate, which is 1, and the speed right now, which is at 60 beats per minute. So if I was to take the rate to 0.5, which is half, that means that the speed would change to 30 beats per minute. So we'll just change this to 0.5, and you'll see that the speed also changed. So these two go together, and you can't change one without changing the other. So So we'll just go back to 60, so the movement went slowed down by half. So we'll go back to 30 and then hit 60, please. And now we have that goes back to there, and our effect is at the speed we started with. We can just scroll our bar over a little bit, and we'll have a couple more options here. We have speed group. We're not going to look into that right now. That will allow us to have some further control during playback. The direction. So right now we're going to the right. So if we right click on that, we'll have these other options. We'll go to the left. The effect will basically change directions. We can do bounce. So it's going to go to the right, and then it's going to bounce back to the left, and then it's going to go bounce back to the right, and so forth. This isn't super helpful with only 8 fixtures, but if you had like 30 or 100 and you're trying to go across a line back and forth like that, it would be really cool. So I'm just going to turn it back to there, to the right. The next couple boxes we have are low value and high value. These basically are telling us what our effect is going to start at 0 and go to 100. So our low value is 0 and our high value is 100. So we're just going to change low value to, let's just do 75 so you can see the drastic difference. So now it's going to go from 75 to 100. Okay, and it's actually a preset that we're using. So we don't really want that for this case, so we're just going to do 0. Okay, so now with 0 to 100, got a few more options here, and these get a little confusing, so we won't really dive too deeply into a lot of these. But phase is basically 0 to 360 is what you pretty much want to leave it on. If you do, let's say 90, they're all going to blink together. If you do 180, they're all going to blink together. It's just another way of controlling the lights to do the things you want them to do. So we'll just go back to 0 to 360. That'll give us the effect we're desiring. The width is basically how much of the effect we're seeing. So if we change this to 25%, they're going to do a lot faster, and it's only using 25% of the overall effect. We're not going to do that. We're going to just do 100. It's going to show us our full effect. We got 3 more options. Attack and decay we're not going to look at because those are not even usable in this effect right now, just because the wave we're using isn't usable in this with this one. So we're going to look at groups. Groups are exactly what they are. We want, how many groups do we want our lights to be in? Let's say we want our groups to be in one light, or all of our lights to be in one group. They're all going to blink together at the same. We do 2. It's going to break them into 2 groups. So forth. We do 3, breaks them into 3, so forth and so on. So we'll go back to 0. Blocks, this is going to break it into how many lights are in each block. So 1 won't really help us because it'll basically be that. So we'll do 2, and you can see that now every 2 lights are going to be affected the same. So then we do 3. You'll see that 3 now, 3, 3, 3, 3. Up to however many you want. So we could do 6, and it'd be 6, please, 6 and 2, because there's only 8 lights. We don't really want to do that right now, so we'll hit 0. And then we have our wings. Now, wings are a little different in that they work from the center out. So if you right click on that and you hit 2 wings, you'll see that it starts in the center and works our way out. There's 2 wings. It starts in the dead center, and there's a wing to the left and a wing to the right. You can get some pretty cool effects with this, especially in pan and tilt movements. I mean, you can get some pretty neat ones too with dimmer, but if we add, let's say we do 4, we have 4 wings now. It's basically starting in the dead center, working its way out, but then creating another wing later on. So anyways, that's what wings are. Just play around with it, and what I always say with effects is try to get it to do exactly what you want it to do, and we'll go from there. There's some other cool options within the effect itself that you can do, but for our purposes, that's the basic stuff that we will look at with effects. So that's the basic. Now, the other thing we can do with an effect is we'll hold down clear, and we can recall this effect just by double clicking it, it's going to select those lights and apply them. However, what we can also do is we can create a selection that is different than just all of them in a row. If we do that, those lights are now going to be affected in that manner. So they're not going to necessarily chase. I take that back because it's a selective effect. So if it's an absolute effect, so for instance, if we're let's do normal chase. So if we go that, and then we select this effect, they're going to do it in the order that we selected them. The reason that it didn't work on effect number 64 is because that is a selective effect, which means those 8 lights are in there and it's going to look that exact way every time, no matter what lights you select. So that's the reason. But that's the basic way to create an effect. I would recommend just going in and playing and figuring out what works for you. So
Awesome. Well, have some fun getting started doing that, and then we'll see you next episode.
see ya.